Welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. Brought to you by Blue Sky Business Consulting. We discuss 5 questions in about 15 minutes. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. I'm very excited to have our guest today because this is a new friend from Philadelphia. I'm very excited. This is Eric Charran, and he is the founder and CEO of the Vulcan Collaborative, again, out of Philadelphia. So, Eric, thank you so much for taking time to join me on the podcast. Tell us a little bit more about Vulcan Collaborative, and you've got a book that you've just published that I'm really excited to talk about for a minute as well. So tell us about those.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Sean. Yeah, Vulcan Collaborative is just kind of like a company that I started. I guess folks like me just have an engine that's always running. And so it's like, what else can I be doing? How else can I push myself? What can I do to learn more and experience more? And so while I got my day job, I oftentimes look for, folks contact me and ask me like, how do I do things like infrastructure as a service, or how do I do AI, or what's the deal with custom inference pipelines and RAG and vector databases associated with LLM accuracy? And those are all things that I'm passionate about and know a little bit about. And so I set up this organization, in my off hours to just have fun talking to folks about technology and giving them advice. While I do the day job, which is leading product teams and engineering teams at an executive level. So gives me a lot of alternative energy, kind of helped me roll into spending time authoring, the leadership book that I just launched back in March, called "Have You Ever Had a Boss That Succeeding in a Dysfunctional Workplace?" And the way that this book came about was a couple of VPs and myself were just sitting around a table commiserating about, management and leadership challenges. And we started kind of trading stories about a boss that we had at the time. And this boss would, have these different unhelpful behaviors. And we'd be like, ooh, I've seen that one before. Not in this person, but in my last 3 executives ago, they did the exact same thing. They challenged me in a meeting where I'm trying to convince people to do things at the C level, and they became my biggest adversary. While they're supposed to be supporting me, I'm like, aha, I've seen that before too. Here's what I did in that situation. What did you do? Hey, that would have been great. So then we started kind of commiserating with each other. We gave these behaviors funny little names like the firefighter or the LIFO or the attack sub. And then we said, well, hey, wouldn't it be great if some of our earlier in career folks, or maybe even people as senior or more senior than us, understood these things, understood the motivation behind them, understood why people were doing them, and then understood what to do when it happens, how to not take it personal, how to know your worth, how to thrive and survive, how to manage upwards, how to get around these behaviors and actually take the negative behaviors out of the toolbox and put in good ones. So that's what the book's all about. My hope is that leaders and people that are led will read it and find it valuable.
I like that. I like the approach. And learning how to kind of deal with those kinds of archetypes are definitely important. So I love what you're doing. I think that's great.
Right.
All right, let's go ahead and jump to our questions then. Eric, sometimes a team or even the entire company will kind of fall into a little bit of a lull and their energy will drop a little bit. What can leaders do to infuse more energy into their teams?
It's a great question. I think leaders can do 2 fundamental things that you can count on consistently. Leaders should allocate resources, which is kind of more boring, but can also introduce energy, but also set culture and establish culture. So culture to me is, what is the behavior that happens when the leader is not looking or when nobody else is looking? So if you go on that definition of culture, and that's instilled by leadership, and the installation of that culture can occur in a number of ways, which is, how can I model what's good? How can I point out what's terrific? And then how can I encourage people to act in the way that I want them to act when I'm not looking or when anybody else is not looking? And so it becomes this ingrained philosophy that people latch onto and believe. As a leader, your job is to try to create a culture, at least mine is, where when there are lulls, we celebrate the lulls, because in many instances in high pressure organizations like the one I worked and your listeners work, you're constantly going. And sometimes the rigmarole, the operationalization, these mechanisms that force us into being like, hey, square peg, square hole, round peg, round hole, oftentimes sap the energy out of the team. And so you have to be aware of, for each person on your team, as possible. Like for me, I lead, I've led organizations with hundreds of people. So you can't do it for everybody, but those leaders can do it for their teams. What
Right.
brings energy? What takes away your energy? And where have you spent most of your time? So where team members are spending time in energy draining tasks, and that's all they do, that's what can contribute to that lull because they're constantly being sapped of energy. So if you have people that look for problems to solve, that look for new ways to address new problems, which look for what are the next set of questions that we're going to be asked, some people get energy from that. Some people get energy from just doing the same thing, but better incrementally over time. We call those pro and place people. Either way, understanding the energy map of your team and then saying, well, how much time are you spending in things that take away your energy versus give you energy? And my job is to try to get you into places where you're spending time generating energy, making sure that you're introducing new results, new challenges, new capabilities to the organization. And I create a culture where that's rewarded. And if you're spending too much time in energy drainer territory, what can I do to help support you to get out of it? So that's how I address lulls. Sometimes lulls are good. If you're in a seasonal business, like I am, Intuit's in a tax business, the season ends and you just want to take a breath and then start to engage in energy generation activities.
I like that. Yeah, it's definitely when you get into the seasonal, that's a good point. Those lulls can be a time to catch your breath and rejuvenate a little bit. So, but
Right.
I like what you said about kind of that individual approach of knowing each person on your team, what kinds of activities will give them energy and what kind of activities sap it. So, really good. I think that's a great approach. I love that. Let's go to question number two. How do you promote learning in your company or in your team?
Yeah, I think it's a philosophy. And what's interesting is I was around at Microsoft during the transition, had an opportunity to spend some time with Satya Nadella. And when he took over in 2014, he gave every one of the senior leaders a book by Carol Dweck called The Growth Mindset. And I got the book and I'm like, Merrick Charran, of course I have a growth mindset. I put it right on my shelf. And then when we were flying out to a leadership conference where he was going to be there, we were going to get to spend time with him. They're like, make sure you read that book. Do not come without having read the book. And so I'm reading it on the plane. I'm like, this thing changed my life within the first 20 pages. At a time where I thought that I had it all figured out. And so the concept behind a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, are you smart or can you get smarter? Have you learned everything you're ever going to know or can you learn and grow? Is it all about what you know and avoiding failures and covering up failures? Or is it about failing, working out loud, learning from your failures, pointing to them and saying, hey, I grew from that? So the growth mindset to me is really what I like to infuse on my team. And I tell my team, I stole this from Satya. I said, you need to be a learn-it-all instead of a know-it-all. We used to,
Oh, I like
we
that.
used to, we used to love know-it-alls. Gosh, this person knows so much about this area, but knowledge is temporary. The ability to acquire new knowledge and integrate it into your job and provide results, that is a talent. And so I try to foster that talent. Like learning is the key to growth. And if I ask you what you're learning and you're like, you know what, I haven't spent time learning anything new lately, I'm like, how can I help you? What do you want to learn? What do you want to know?
I really like that. I love that approach and I love that phrase, be a learn it all. I love that
Mhm.
because I agree in the growth mindset. There's always more to learn. There's always new ways to apply what we've learned. And you mentioned that, and I love that approach. I love it. All right.
Right.
Question number three, share one tip for effective delegation.
So I read another book called How to Get Things Done. It's been around for a while, but at the time that I read it, maybe like 10 years ago now, I was just, a new executive, just being buried by tasks, by, taking on everything, moving from an individual contributor to a manager, which I'm used to doing everything, to realizing that I got to let things go and people might not do them the way I would have done them at the quality level I would have done them, but getting used to being comfortable with that, but then telling myself it's more valuable that somebody else does this so that I can be this other thing is super important to realize. It's a maturity thing. I realized that I had to grow up a little bit as a professional and learn that. The second thing is, I know you asked for one tip, but there's a phrase
Okay.
called in the book called "Do it, delegate, or delete." It's a 2 minute rule. You either do it yourself if it's under 2 minutes. If it's over 2 minutes, you say, I'm either not going to do that, and you delete it. And you say, sorry, can't do that right now. Or you say, I'm going to give this to another person because it's going to take me more than 2 minutes to do it. It goes to somebody on my team. I give them instructions and I help coach and guide them through it, and then they do it. So those are the tips. The do it, delegate it, or delete it approach really works well for me.
I like that. It's a great approach, and it's clean and easy too. It makes it
Yeah.
really easy to just very quickly one of those three. It's going to happen. One of those three. I like that. All right.
Yep.
Question number 4. How do you communicate purpose and vision to your team?
It's a good question. Sometimes there's formal channels in which you do it. Sometimes there are strategy meetings, vision meetings in which you say, hey, folks, this is our vision. This is why we're here. This is our purpose. And that's useful to set the stage. But people eventually go back to their daily lives, professionally and personally, and they forget those things. You also, as the person that's responsible for the vision and the culture, will forget those things as you get wrapped up in the day to day. So there's got to be these forcing functions or these reinforcing behaviors in which you say, hey, the reason why we're doing these things is because of these reasons. And this accrues to our visions because of these reasons. And that can occur in daily interactions with your team. And that can occur when somebody does something that you recognize is actually in service to that vision or to the culture, and you call it out. It's these tangible reminders of people are performing well. I want to catch somebody doing a good job, and then say, "Hey, you're living up to our values." The other way to do it is to I'm in the product business. I'm a technologist, but I also look at things through a product lens, and I have even when I was a deep technologist, and still am. But taking a product lens means that I get out of building the wrong thing the right way and then have to go rebuild it. I spent my first half of my career doing that before I realized, hey, maybe I should follow something called the software development lifecycle, in which we get requirements first and then we build software to match the requirements. Nothing new here, but that is done so little in the industry, Sean. So the idea is figure out what people want and then find creative, innovative ways to meet or exceed their expectations. I also drive the concept of, hey, we want to give people cars, not faster horses as well. So I'm an innovator and I think in those terms.
Oh, I like that. And I really like what you said earlier about helping people to see the tangible and when they're, hey, you're living this value and pointing it out and in a very positive, reinforcing way, helping them to see it too, because sometimes we don't connect it. We understand the concept, but we don't have an effective way of applying it to the situation. We don't always, we kind of miss the mark a little bit. And that's why I like what you said so much, because it does require us to show the team or the employees the importance of applying it in certain situations. Okay, this is what this value means. It's not enough, in my view, it's not enough to just stick it on the wall. You've got to be able to help
Right.
them be able to see it in an everyday practical application. That's great. I love it. All right, our last question. This is a fun one. Tell us a story, a baseball story that's a favorite memory of yours.
Yeah, that's a toughie. So I probably don't have a specific memory, but I have a baseball era. And so I'm a Gen Xer. I've been around for a while. Grew up mainly in the 80s. Got to see Reggie Jackson play, and this was the New York Yankees at a time where there was Reggie Jackson, Darryl Strawberry, Dave Winfield, Goose Goss. It's like all these greats. These
Yeah.
are like the Justice League to me. Like, and so this was at the time where you could go to the store and buy a pack of cards, and you had stickers. You had a baseball sticker album with that chalky gum that came with it. So I would collect all these different things. I remember just watching Reggie Jackson, step onto the field as a New York Yankee and Mr. October. That was my favorite baseball era, and to me, there hasn't been one like it since.
Love it. I love it. I think I'm a little bit older than you, but we can talk about that when we get done with our recording here in a second. But I also remember that era, and it was great. I mean, we can talk baseball all day, but we'll
For sure.
start to wrap it up here out of the courtesy to all of our listeners and watchers and all of that. We won't talk too long about baseball, but I love the story and I love hearing about your memories and your enthusiasm for that era. And I could not agree more. This is great. Eric, thank you so much for taking time to be on the podcast today. How can people find you?
Thanks for having me on, Sean. Folks can find me at author Eric Charran on TikTok and Instagram. You can also go to Amazon and just type in, have you ever had a boss that? You might have to put in my name, Eric Charran with a C, and it pops right up. And happy to hear what people think of the book. Please write a review if you're so inclined to let others know what you think of it. Please make sure it's honest. and looking forward to seeing what people think of the work.
I love it. Very good. Well, I'm excited to read the book myself. So we'll have to reconnect at a later time and talk about the book in more detail. So I'd love to do that. All right, Eric, thanks again for joining us. And thanks to all of you who are subscribers and are paying attention each week to our podcast here about all the things we're talking about relating to leadership and teams. Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great day. This is Sean Richards with the Team Engagement Podcast, where leaders of teams share their insights. For more ideas, go to teamengagementpodcast.com. We also invite you to follow or subscribe to our podcast wherever you may be listening or watching. Is your business thriving? Go to tbs-score.com to find out. Thanks for joining us today. Have a great day.